Math is hard. Barbie.
Okay, I first remember hearing this issue with Barbie, I think when I was in college. It was on the radio where one of the Barbies, where he pulled the string and she says various phrases. One of the phrases she said was, "Math is hard." And it caused a big stir, and they eventually pulled that Barbie from the shelf. And I thought at the time, I said, man, somebody can make a lot of money if they have one of those. But the idea of this math being hard really permeates society, and I'm kind of sensitive to it, probably for obvious reasons. But I've listened to sports talk radio, and they'll say, "Oh, we have to do some math. Oh boy, didn't really want to do this." Or watch a YouTube channel, somebody's discussing something. Oh, we have to do some math, whether it's doing something simple, sports statistic calculation. So this idea of math being hard permeates society, and so for some reason, I look back when I wrote my books on for parents to teach your children math. I go back to my grandparents, and my mom worked with me before I even got to kindergarten, and doing just simple addition. I can add two single-digit numbers, such as 8 and 7, 15. I had those all down. I can count to 100, and it gave me a head start. So, and as I went through, math became fascinating to me, and going through high school, people would ask, what's the answer? So I actually tried to start a business of doing people's homework, and my mom found out, and so it nixed that. But it wasn't until my senior year we were doing pre-calculus, and it was Laline that said, "Hey, Mike, how do you do this?" And so from then on, I was explaining how to do it to students, like not just knowing how to do it, but being able to explain how to do it. And I was able to do that from my senior year. In college, I've helped some people get through their math classes through tutoring. But I really didn't want to go into teaching. I was in the high tech field. I've subbed before, been in the military, sub, got out. But I was in the high tech field. I went and got some certifications for MCSE and Cisco, and the dot-com bust happened. And so I was looking for a job, and there was no really jobs with those certifications. And then I'd probably have to get new certifications, because that was when Windows NT went to Windows Millennium. And so I'd have to, spend and use my GI Bill money to get another one. I didn't have it. So then my mom goes, "Why don't you go back into subbing, be a substitute teacher?" I says, I really didn't want to do that. But one of the things I found out is anytime I went into a math class and started teaching it, the kids would say, "Mister, you need to be a teacher. We understand you, And I got kids to tutor. So, after the first year for summer school, I got called to do summer school, and I was kind of surprised I didn't have a math credential. So I said, okay, I taught geometry. And in the second week of teaching this, I was doing copying the papers for the next day, and the principal came in. He told me, "I hear you're doing a good job." And I'm like, "Who's been in the classroom?" I said, "From who?" Because no adults have come in, to observe me. He said, "Oh, the students told you that." I said, "Oh, okay, that's nice to know." And then the year after that, I had an algebra class, and I was getting a little frustrated, because I do the problem, the kids wouldn't understand. So where did I lose you? What part didn't you understand? And I finally asked them, "Don't you ever ask your teacher, to stop? I didn't understand that." And one of the students, in a very sincere voice, said, "Mr. Feemster, you don't make us feel like a dumbass if we don't get it." And so then I vowed that I would never, ever do that to a student, to make them feel, I wanted to encourage them, because the goal is to get them to understand, and so I would do this. And so in tutoring, I did a class, and I had this young man who I'm still in contact with. He's good. He's done well, but he was in geometry, and I did this geometry class for 2 days, and he asked me, "Could you tutor me?" I said, "Sure." I gave him my number and have his mom call me. And I sat with him at the dinner table, his dinner table in his house, working with him on his geometry. After about an hour, his mom comes up to me, sits down, and she says, "So what do you think?" And in this moment, I got probably the cockiest I have ever been in my life. I looked at his mom and said, "He's confused. I can fix that." And there was no doubt in my mind that I could. And he was getting a D at the time. In a few weeks, he got a B. And so I worked with him through his sophomore year in geometry and his junior year in algebra 2. He got a B. He eventually was able to go to college. He came out here. We met on Facebook. And he told me his dad said I had to buy him a beer as I helped him with his education. So he bought me 2. And he's a really good man. And he's doing well. So I tutored him, so I learned that I can do this. And one time I had a geometry class right after Christmas break. And I went to that class, and I had this real stack. It's about, it's almost like a script. Write this, say this, right, and see this teacher. And so I went to this other math teacher, said, "Okay, what's the deal with this?" And she told me, "We really need you to teach this. They need to learn." I said, "Okay, it's law of sines, law of cosines, right?" She says, "Yeah, so I got this." And she's like, "You know how to do this?" I said, "Yeah, I know how to teach this." So for that week, I taught law of sines and cosines. And for some weird twist of fate, I went back to that school Wednesday, the next week, and I wanted me to teach. So I went and talked to the teacher and told him who I was. He goes, "Oh, thank you. I thought I would have to double up, but they knew exactly what they needed to know. They were right where they were supposed to be." And he said, "You wanted to be a teacher?" I said, "I'm thinking about it, but, I majored in finance instead of math, so I'm not subject matter qualified." He goes, "Well, you have you can take a test, and there's these called pre-credentialing courses." So I took those, got subject matter qualified, and then my mom told me that there's an opening in Blythe. Mr. Gilmore, who was my, math teacher, was the principal, and so I got hired as an intern while I worked on my credential. But it was in a remedial class, and so I had a lot of attitude problems. It was not that great for what I did. But one of the things I noticed that stuck out is I was working, like, say, take long division. Some of the kids couldn't even do that. And I would have the kids tell them how to work it, and they would get a lot of the problems right, but then the last few they got wrong. So what I learned is that these kids, I give them an assignment, and they get the last part wrong. And I finally asked, I had a suspicion. And I asked this one student girl, and I said, "Let me ask you a question, because you got all these right, and then all of a sudden you started getting them wrong. As you were doing this, did you think, oh, this is easy, and then you freaked out because you thought, well, wait a second, math's supposed to be hard, so therefore if it's easy, I'm doing it wrong?" And she said, "Yes, that's exactly what I thought." And so that taught me then that it's not enough for me to teach math, which I can do, but I have to teach the kids that they can do the math, that it's really not as hard as they think it is. And so from then on, I worked on telling them how simple it is. And every time I go into a math class, I want to tell them how easy this is. And when I had my tutoring business, I would work that. And I had the CBEST, the California Basic Educational Standards Test, which kids needed to pass. And so I had a couple of students that went through my tutoring business, passed it after 10 hours. Then I got, back in after non-reelect, I subbed, and I was in a math class, and the principal said, "Listen, we're doing the CBS. We're worried about these kids." I said, "Okay, I got this." And I walked in cocky. I told the kids, I said, "Listen, you have to pass this test in order to graduate high school, okay? You're taking the test in 4 weeks, which is enough time. If you pay attention, listen to me, I'll have you walking into that test with the attitude, I want to kick this test butt, and it'll be the easiest test you ever take." And that's how I started the class. And so I started breaking down questions by how long it should take. For instance, most of the questions were 5-second to 10-second questions, and I told them this. For instance, you have x to the 4th times x to the 3rd equals. It's x to the 7th. You add 4 and 3, 7, that's the exponent. Get it, done, move on. Took 5 seconds, you're done. Okay? Some of them were 15 seconds. The graphing. One boy says, "Oh, I don't understand the graphing." I said, "You have me, you'll get it." And so I spent time on graphing, and from then on, they were able to get it. They had the graphing questions either, here's a graph, which one of these 4 equations match the graph, or here's an equation, which one of these 4 graphs match it. And I explained to them, and most of them can get them done in 15 seconds. They were that easy. And so I had to convince the kids that they were able to do the math, because it's not as hard as they think it is, as society tells them it is. Because they see something simple, their mind rejects it. And I started seeing this over and over and over again. Even to the point when they took the test, they came back, some girls said, "Mr. Feemster, I'm so glad you talked to me about 5 and 10 second questions, because that test seemed seemed too easy that I freaked out, but I just did it." And she ended up blowing the test out of the water. She only missed 1 question out of it. Okay. I had another young lady I tutored. She went to a prestigious university in this country. Still in touch with her through Facebook. But she wanted to get higher on her SAT score, so I worked with her. And we were sitting next to her in my business, and she goes, "Okay, I don't know how to do this problem." I said, "Okay, well, what do you think you do first?" "Well, I do this." "Okay, and then what?" Then I do this." "Okay, and after that, what do you do?" "Well, then I do this." And so we kept doing that, and then she solved the problem. And I says, "You know what happened there?" She goes, "What?" I says, "I didn't tell you to do anything except, what do you do next? That's all I did the whole time. What do you do next? And then what? And then what? You did this all on your own. You just didn't believe that you can do it on your own. So when you take a test, just pretend I'm there going, what do you do next?" She upped her SAT score by 80 points. Okay. And anytime I go into a math class now, I know that I'm going to have to deal with kids not not thinking they can do it when I know in fact that they can. And I'm very patient because I can diagnose. I found out that it was rare when I told Mr. Gilmore. I said, I can look at a student's problem and figure out what they got wrong in the thought process. And he told me that's something very rare, and I figured any math teacher can do that. So when I'm in a long-term position with kids, they do poorly, I'll go over why they got wrong, because I could tell in their thought process where their thinking was wrong. Okay. And sometimes, they'll get stuff wrong and they don't know why. And I had another student who, his parents says, "Mike, he's flunked algebra twice. We don't know." Okay. Within 15 minutes of working with him, I understood the problem. He just got confused with positive and negative numbers. So he did the mechanics right, and at the end, if it was 5 minus 3, he would get that. But if it was a negative 5 minus 3, he would get confused, and he was getting those wrong. He just knew he was getting half the problems wrong. He just didn't know why. And so I told the parents, I says, work with him on positive and negative numbers at home. I gave him some worksheets to work out. I worked with him for that 10 weeks. He just come and sit and do homework. Kid popped a B. Okay, he just wasn't taught that. And so I'm very lenient, or say understanding, with kids that do poorly. I can bring them in, go over their test work, see where they go wrong, give them another shot at it. Okay, the ones I do chew out are the ones that get the perfect scores. And case in point, I had this boy. I had him as a junior, I think last year. And I've had him for, because I've subbed at more or less the same school. I've had him many times. So I had a rapport with this young man. And 2 weeks in a row, he got 10 out of 10 on a quiz. And so I pulled him out and said, "Oh, come here." Set him down. I said, "I want to show you something. Look what you did. 2 weeks in a row, you got perfect scores on these quizzes." Okay? And so I told him, I said, "I never, ever want to hear you complaining about math is hard. You can't do it." Okay, never. Because he used to, "Mister, this is too hard, I can't do it." We got a loud car going by. And so I said, "You have proven to me, more important, you have proven to yourself that you have the capability of doing this. You just don't realize that you have it. Okay? Stop selling yourself short." He looked at me and said, "Facts," because that's what he would always say. So math is really not as hard as a lot of people think it is, but this thing permeates society. And that has a grip on their mind. And once I convince if I convince a student, I've done it before and I've seen it happen. that it's really easy. I see them just take off and they start acing everything because they had a mental block in their mind. They're thinking the math is harder than it has to be. Okay, and this permeates society. Now, I told you this story because it's going to tie into a lot of things I want to say later. So thank you for listening, and God bless.